ratio in mind. It instead had a whole other purpose, and then somebody decided we need classrooms, let's build a wall. One here, one there, and so you get a building like this, where, by the way, the ceiling is one ceiling all the way, which also causes problems when I get too loud here. It disturbs the class next door. And so on. Matt, am I having a problem? Yes? Is this funny?
No.
It's cool though, right? I mean, this is just, we can do, I asked the question, what is there a perfect song? But what if I asked, is there a perfect face?
Danny DeVito.
I don't think that's a real person, by the way, but is it a real person? No. I know that they love picking, like, what's her face, Jolie? Angelina, Jolie.
I do have to say, a lot of times people just put the golden ratio over stuff and say, look, it's the golden ratio. That doesn't mean it's not necessarily there, but that does mean that does happen a lot. Is people like looking for things when they aren't there.
Look, it's going over her ear on the right, so I guess it's the left side.
Yeah, it doesn't perfectly fit her face, does it?
No, it does not.
You got it. You got the government.
I'm confused about this, where this comes in, because, why is it looking more and more like Marx every day? Because I'm not going, that's the wrong philosophy. But I mean, you can play with that, and who? Hillary Swank.
Oh, yeah.
Is Hillary Swank a person? Isn't that Hillary Swank?
That should be the next quiz question. Is she hot?
Oh, the quiz question I have for you, I might as well ask it now that you brought it up, is do you have a soul? And if so, what is it? How would you describe it? And what Socrates is going to go on to argue now is that the idea of this Pythagorean theorem, he doesn't call it that. You have to figure out, hey, wait a minute, I know this, that's the Pythagorean theorem. But as you're looking at it and thinking that he's suggesting that the math for this was already in anybody's head, not just a slave boy. Anybody that would have been asked these questions would have been able to figure this out. And it's not because you're discovering it or you're inventing it, it's kind of sort of both. You're discovering it for yourself. God bless you.
Oh, thank you.
This is like, which is the rodeo.
Duncan?
Walter something. Danke? No, bitte. Oh, you can say danke for thanking me for saying Gesundheit.
Duncan.
It's a ceremony.
It's an exchange.
God bless you. Because, expelling your psyche, you've just opened the possibility for Satan to move in. So let's bless you right away so that God gets there first. Right? So Plato thinks, Socrates thinks, it's probably Plato. Because Socrates, remember, in the first set of dialogues, Socrates doesn't come up with any answers. In this dialogue, the Meno, now something changes, and now we've got answers. In fact, they become boring because, yes, Socrates. Oh, wow, Socrates. Oh, you're right, Socrates. Absolutely, Socrates. Well, no more, give and take, but instead now Socrates knows everything, and what he knows is the soul is unchanging. Remember, the soul is unchanging. That's why you can't really create the soul, nor can you destroy it. It doesn't have any parts. If it doesn't have any parts, it can't be changing. In some sense, the soul is abstract in the same way that math is abstract. This exists in the universe in some sense. I mean, you could go back to Brian Greene and, the idea of the metaverse, that there's plenty of other universes out there, but our universe is the one that just happens to have exactly the right math for suns to form, for planets to form, for oxygen to form, for life to form. And so we probably wouldn't find life on any of the other universes because they don't have exactly the right math, which gives us all of these interesting similarities that we can see in all life forms, because it's the abstract organization of the universe. If you're a deist, you could say this is God talking, literally. This is how God speaks to us. What's the name of the book by, gosh, I'm getting old. The man who led the Genome Project and was the head of the National Institute of Health for quite a few years and has retired recently. But he also wrote a book called The Language of God, I think is the title of the book. And what he basically was arguing is that the mathematical nature of our chromosomes, our DNA, is the language of God. Not only in our genes, but also in things like the way the flowers grow and the way healthy faces look. And this famous Vitruvian Man that Da Vinci stole from another artist. The idea, that we have an interesting golden ratio from not only my teeth, but also the way my hands are designed. And then if we think about how we began measurement, this is a cubit. You ever wondered what a cubit is? If someone ever tells you, I want you to build a boat, 40 cubits by 50 cubits, that's a cubit. So you know how to build your own boat, right? So the connection here then is that our souls are our connectivity to the abstract nature of the universe. And that seems to be invented in Plato's philosophy. So we call him the idealist, and we can trace that. Clearly, we've mentioned this, there are souls or something of individuals like the pharaohs, so if their soul meets a particular test, then they can go on and meet the afterlife and then help us. That's their goal, etc. But with Plato, we get the sense that we have a soul that's persistent over time. Notice that Socrates in his Crito, so the apology, the trial, he's condemned to death, he's in jail, and if you look at the websites and things, they actually have the jail, you can go visit it, it's a tourist site, and while he's there, his friend Crito comes and says, Socrates, I've arranged everything, we've bribed all the guards, we've got everything all set, and you can leave. Come with me, we can go. He's bribed everybody, and actually it was fairly traditional, for people to be, so that they didn't actually get killed in these kinds of circumstances. He would have had to have left the city, but at least he could go. He refuses. Crito says, no, this is what my city, my mother, has concluded, that I'm guilty, even though I disagree, and so they're going to kill me, and I'm not going to run away, because if I had been arguing with you about what the right thing to do is in a circumstance, I would have argued to do what the judgment of the city was. And so I would be going against my own arguments if I went with you. So how could I discuss things in the other towns, with new friends, when people could always point out, well, Socrates, you yourself did what you thought was wrong, how do you account for that? And so he would never be able to live with that. That's the crito. By the way, crito is the same root for critical thinking, right? And so if you think of it, this is Crito who's coming up with this critical argument at that point. But then it goes on to the Phaedo, which is the death scene, as we saw with the Steve Martin, spoof of it. And that's also another place where they argue about the soul. And Socrates again argues that, my body is changing, but once it's gone, my soul seems, 50-50. Who knows where it goes, right? So he's already in the Phaedo talking about the soul. So we end up with this concept of the soul, and that we can understand these ideas because of the soul. If that makes sense.
Soul, can you just connect to your feelings?
Can,
You were just talking about
what was the question again?
soul connected to your feelings. Like,
Well, number one, let me point out, this seems to be the first attempt to understand what the soul is. It seems to be being invented this way, right? And even by the time we get to his student Aristotle, remember, by the time we get to the third set of dialogues, Aristotle seems to be an influence. And in those third dialogues, Plato critiques his own theory of the ideas. And it becomes impossible. So even in his lifetime, it seems like Plato's going to realize that this theory is full of holes. There's a lot of problems that we can't really solve with it, right? And by the way, for Aristotle, the soul is the activity of the body. Because Aristotle's not going to accept that there's actual things that exist that don't have substance. And yet he doesn't want to deny the existence of the soul. So what is the soul for Aristotle? This stuff that I'm doing. My body's doing all of this stuff. That's the soul. Of course, for Aristotle, once the body dies, boom, where's the soul now? Well, you still have one. It's just a whole bunch of little bacteria that are eating up this remains of, a pile of meat. It's basically rotting because no one had a freezer yet. By the way, I think that's one of the reasons people live longer in Alaska. Nothing goes bad in a freezer. That could be funny, but apparently not.
My fridge broke, so I'm afraid that hold up for me. Things do go bad in the freezer.
Mechanical things. And if you're not kept at least to a minimum temperature, yes, I don't recommend it. Please don't go hiking unless you know the trail, etc. Especially if you're new to Alaska and have only been here 2 weeks now, or thereabout. Be careful, etc. Don't pet a moose. Okay. So let's move on to the Republic a little bit. How did I get there? Let's go back to this. And let's think a little bit about, where is my Republic here? The Republic. No! That's what happens when your links bleed over. That must mean that there's no help for that. All right. So, all right, I'll go to this. I'll have to go up. I'll have to go here. Plato. You see, by the way, why I didn't ask you to buy a book? I hope you don't mind. By the way, there's some books upstairs. Remember, there's some books down at the end of the hallway that are free. So if you like books, please feel free. So now if we're thinking about the Republic, this has, notice, 10 different books inside it. And each of them is about as long as a small dialogue. So this is one of the rather longer books. And it's an interesting play, if you think of it as written as a play. And you've got all these different individuals all introducing one another. By the way, 2 of them are brothers of Plato, as far as we know, Glaucon and Adimantus, who are in this. Plato is not an individual in the dialogue. That's usually, he's the one sitting there with the camera, with, the notes, etc. I guess. I don't know. But in any case, by the way, he was in the trial. He was one of the ones in the trial, if you noticed. So here we have a bunch of guys all coming together and having a discussion. And the topic is justice. Justice. And, as I mentioned, I think in the first day, I had a professor who taught us IS. You had the chance, IS. What is IS? Interest of the stronger. So, I mean, if you think about it, this is one way of viewing justice. What is good? Let's try this. Put in the Barbarian musical. You're going to hate me for this. I've got to find the actual. How can I get to the videos only?
Does that cover the front?
Yeah. Ronald and
Here we go. Oh, shoot. Come on, give me the actual.